Now we're going to go into another more advanced formatting topic, which is conditional formatting. In other words, how to format cells differently depending on the actual values that are included in part of the cell. And I would say this is something that comes up with a decent amount of frequency in investment banking and finance. Certainly not as common as the more basic functions like simple navigation, copying and pasting, changing basic styles and number formats. So not as common as those, but still something that you definitely want to know and something that's going to give you a big advantage if you already know it before you actually start working in the field. And you can certainly use conditional formatting with a data set like we have in front of us right now. But I would say it's actually more common to be using it with models, whether it's merger models, LBO models, or even valuations. And to give you an example of how we typically use conditional formatting, I'm going to go over to an example of a basic LBO model, which is from another part in this course, which I've modified. So I'm going to Alt tab over to that right now. Okay, so to make this easier to understand what I've changed here, I've basically made it so that the debt in this leverage buyout has a maximum leverage. And this is called a covenant, by the way. If when you raise debt for a company, they specify a term like you can only have a maximum of 2x leverage or a maximum of 3x leverage. In other words, the total amount of debt that you have can never exceed your EBITDA by more than 2 times or 3 times. So I've entered this new line here for maximum leverage for the debt. And it's a bit silly here because we know that we start out already with over 2 times the maximum leverage here, but I'm just doing this to illustrate the point of how we do conditional formatting at the bottom. So we have this new assumption up here, and I'll press Control and then the down arrow key to get down to the bottom here to illustrate this. So I've added this new line called total debt divided by EBITDA. And it's actually extremely common to see this with leverage buyout models. I didn't include it in the basic one that's part of this course because I was just trying to illustrate the concept and the bare minimum that you need to actually construct an LBO model. But when you're actually working at a bank, it's very common to see this, and you have all sorts of other statistics. And we see that it's filled out here. I just went in and filled it out, and we see that the debt over EBITDA is 2.7 in year one, 2.1, and then declines each year. And you see the problem right here that initially it's over 2x. So we have a problem here. We're not adhering to the covenant, to one of the requirements for our debt. And this can be a big problem. Now, the reason why conditional formatting can come in handy in a case like this is that let's say we're looking at this model under a couple of different scenarios, and we keep playing around with the numbers, and we want to look at what would happen under a number of different revenue growth or profitability or different types of debt, those types of scenarios. Well, if we just had conventional formatting like we do here, then it would be very difficult to tell when one of those requirements, like the covenant up above that said we can only have 2x maximum leverage, it would be difficult to tell when that was actually breached. But if we have conditional formatting, then we could highlight these cells in red, and then we could change these, and then we can keep the rest of them having the default color of black and white for the background. So conditional formatting lets us very easily check when something like that happens, or when we're looking at other different types of models, if we exceed a certain limit or go under a certain limit, then it lets us very easily highlight it and draw our attention to it. So now I'm going to go through and show you how to actually set this up within Excel. Now the first thing we actually want to do here is to review one of our previous lessons and actually change the format for these numbers. So I'll press Shift Control and then the right arrow key to select this whole area, and then Control 1, then go to Number with N, and then go to a category with Alt C. Press C twice to go down to Custom. And for type, I'll just press Alt T to get there. For type, we want to have an X after this because these are multiples. So we want to change the format here to 0.0 and then space X. And you remember from the custom number format tutorial where we did this, that this is pretty basic, pretty straightforward, but it's something that comes in real handy. And we're certainly going to use it here. So we'll change this. So now we have that. And now to do the conditional formatting, in both Excel 2003 and Excel 2007, you highlight the area with Shift Control arrow key, and then you press Alt OD, Alt OD to bring up conditional formatting. Now the interface here looks a bit different in Excel 2003, and I think it's actually more intuitive and easier to use. You have to go through one fewer step to do this. In Excel 2007, I have to create this new rule by going to Alt N right here. and then I have to pick which of these rule types I want. In Excel 2003, you can skip all this and just get to what you're looking for. So for the rule type here, because I'm using Excel 2007, I'll press Alt S and then the down arrow key. And this is what I want, the format only cells that contain thing right here. Again, in Excel 2003, when you press Alt OD, you're literally going to get the bottom half of this dialog box right here, edit the rule description. That's what will appear on your screen. So it's much easier to get to and to use. The interface in 2003 is easier here, and you basically just get this screen when you press Alt OD. Here, for the format only cells with part, so you definitely want to be modifying the cell value. The rest of this, quite honestly, is not that useful. Sometimes we use errors or blanks or dates occurring, but most of the time we care about the cell value. And we're going to change this. We're moving between each thing with tab, by the way, each category here with tab. And we're going to say cell value, we'll use the down arrow key to move down here, greater than, and then we'll press enter to select that, and then we'll press tab. We get to this box, and here we could hard code it and enter 2 right here, but that's not a smart approach. We should be linking it to the number that we have above because that's the constant that we're using here. So we'll press the arrow key to get onto the spreadsheet, and then press Control up a couple times to get to the top here. And we'll just go over here, and I'll move this so you can see what I'm doing. Just press arrow key to get over here, Control arrow key to select this. And we see here the rule is cell value is greater than E8. And E8, again, is referring to this debt max leverage item right here. Then the other thing that we have to do here is go to Edit Rule, Alt-E. We could have actually done this in the beginning, but I just pressed Enter too soon. Press Alt-F to get to Format, and we'll press F to go to Fill, and we can just select the color. If we want to make it really stand out, we can pick our red right here, and press Tab and go to Enter, and then press Enter again to make this work. Okay, so now we have the format set up right there. So it should appear in red. I'll really draw our attention to it. We have our rule, and then we know which area it applies to. So now we'll press Enter to actually apply this. And as we might expect, it works as intended. And this just lets us draw our attention to the total debt over EBITDA number much more easily. Because now we can see that if we violate one of our covenants, if for example, the leverage goes above the max of 2.0x that we set above, then we see it highlighted in red. And this is probably the most common way that you see conditional formatting being used in investment banking. So this is a little bit more advanced. You may not have even gotten to LBO models yet, or may not understand everything that's going on the screen right here. But I just wanted to show you this example because this is literally how you actually use it in banking in 99% of all cases. So even if you didn't understand everything we did just now, or you haven't seen this model before, just keep in mind that conditional formatting is very useful for checking whether or not you exceed a certain threshold number, or you're under a certain minimum, or something of that nature. And that's how we use it in most cases in investment banking. So now that we have that in place, I'm just going to go back to the original spreadsheet that I had and go through the sample exercise with you. Okay, so what we're going to do here is pretty simple, actually much simpler than what I just did there. And basically, we're just going to look at customers by different product prices. So basically, we want to see which customers are paying a lot for this company's products and which ones are not. So we're going to format this data set slightly differently. And I'm going to go through the first time, set up the rules, and then it'll be the same format. You'll pause the video, try it yourself, and then I'll go through again with all the shortcuts that time. So first, we'll select this product price column. Go to Conditional Formatting, Alt-O-D, Alt-N for New Rule. And we're just going to go with between here. And we're going to set this to between 50,000 and 100,000. For the format, we're just going to make it red because these are the highest paying customers. And as we expect, these two at the bottom are now highlighted. So now let's add another rule here and look at the mid-range customers. So we'll enter another new rule. And by the way, in Excel 2003, this is actually easier because you don't have to go through all this. You can just go directly to the format only cells that contain when you press Alt-O-D, so it's much easier. Now for the values, we're going to enter 10,000, and we'll say 49,999 to make sure that the 50,000 is not included. For the format, we'll just make these blue. And now we'll apply this. Okay, so now we can easily see which customers are relatively low paying, anyone in beige, which ones are higher paying, anyone in blue, and then which ones pay the most, anything in red. And this is honestly not too useful here, but it is good practice for you to actually do this and set up the rules yourself. So pause the video right now, try this yourself, and then if you get stuck or you want to check your work, just unpause it. Then I'll walk you through it again and give you all the shortcuts and go through it in more detail this time. Okay, good. So now I'm just going to undo everything that I did. Now walk through this again with giving you the shortcuts at each step of the way. So Control Z several times to undo this. And to select this whole column, we'll press Shift Control down, then Alt OD, Alt N for new rule. And we just press the down arrow key here to get to the proper one. In Excel 2003, you don't have to do this at all. You just go directly here. Press Tab to get to cell value, which we want. Tab again to get to between. And then for this, we want to enter 50,000 right here with the keyboard. Press Tab again to get to the next one. 100,000 for this. And then for the format, press Alt F, and we can just use the mouse to get to red right there. Press Tab a few times and then Enter for OK. Press Tab to get to OK there, and then press Enter. Now the way I did it before, I actually just entered two separate rules, but we can actually do it together, at least in Excel 2007. In 2003, if this doesn't work, then you would just press Alt-OD again to get the dialog and where you can enter another rule right there. So I'll press Alt-N to enter another rule. Down arrow key, Tab, Tab again, and then 10,000 right here. Tab again, and then 49,999 right here. Alt F to go to Format, and then highlight the blue, go to OK, and then Tab and press Enter on the OK button. We have all that set up, and now we'll just press Enter to apply this, and there you have it. So we have the mid-range orders highlighted in blue, the lower end ones highlighted in beige, and then the highest paying ones, the 100,000 and the 50,000 orders highlighted in red right there. So that's an example of how you do conditional formatting. Again, I would say that it's far more useful and commonly used with models, especially LBO models, to check on whether or not you are violating the covenants. But nevertheless, it can be useful for data sets as well, and now you should have a good idea of how to do that. Next up, we're going to go through printing. So how to set up your Excel file to properly print on the page, because a lot of times when you're doing this, senior bankers don't want to see the Excel file sent to them. They just want you to print it out and show it to them so that they can see directly and so they don't have to bother with checking their email or anything. So it's really important to know how to set things up to print properly and how to do formatting there. So we're going to finish up the formatting section of this tutorial by going over how to print things, and then we'll be getting into formulas and then some of the more advanced topics after that.